but the debate's still fully ready to go, and hopefully that will still work out nicely for us.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. No, don't worry. I got some experts lined up on some other areas too. We can talk about later. But go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. So we have a student lead. She's going to lead the entire conference, and we're ready to go. So Irvi, without further ado.
Hi, my name is Irvi Patel, and before we begin, I'd like to thank you for joining us today for this conference. We are students at David Suzuki Secondary School, which is located in Toronto, and our school consists of about 1,800 students, and our school day actually runs from 8:30 till 3. So right now it is 3:30 here, so we're here after school for this conference. We are the international debate team at our school, and our goal is to take science beyond the classroom and explore topics currently trending in the science world. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm Ian. I'm Sophia. I'm Desiree. I'm Fatima. I'm Vanessa.
Right.
Thank you. So,
yeah, Dale, they give you like Mr. Ellis would know, but Dale Valley is where a suburb of Austin, Texas. We have about 3,200.
Thank you. So before we begin our debate, I would actually like to briefly go over the debate structure. So what will happen is we'll start with our opening statements. So we'll start with our opening statement, which will be about 3 minutes, and then you can give your opening statement. Then we will state our 3 main arguments, and there will be a maximum time limit of 5 minutes for that. And then you guys can state your 3 main arguments. Then we will have a debating period where we can go back and forth and sort of give our points and explain why our side is right. And that will occur for about 15 to 20 minutes. And in the end, we will have our closing statements that'll follow. Is that okay?
That'd be fine because we're combining 2 different classes. So in about a little bit of time, this class will go. Go ahead. Go ahead with the opening statement.
Okay, thank you. So, clinical trials are crucial to the medical world as it allows us to progress with our techniques and strategies while gaining insight on illnesses that influence people worldwide. Clinical trials are what help us answer a number of questions in regards to treatment in order to ensure they improve the health and quality of life for patients. The numerous benefits that come from the ongoing use of clinical trials make it a worthwhile technique to utilize right now and into the future. So you can give your opening statement at this time.
Just give us about another minute. It's on my computer. Okay.
Mr. Cunningham, can you say the name of your school one more time for our students?
Yeah, it's Del Valle High School in Austin.
Del Valle?
Yeah, it's DELVALLE.
Oh, okay. Okay. See the passion.
Go ahead, loud.
Okay. There are 10 reasons to negate the concept of human clinical trials. First, healthy people often have false positive results. That when a test shows a problem when there isn't one. This can make it difficult to interpret results when a person has a disease. Many times this means giving a healthy person disease and then a cure. However, these people who were healthy before, are they really in the same shape as a person who has had this disease for years? We say not. Second, people with disease may have normal or false negative results. The drug we know as Viagra now was designed and tested to be as a blood pressure drug. The company who tested the drug noticed a side effect that was found in 14% of the drug patients could be temporary relief for erectile dysfunction. Cross-apply the cost to the company had to be made back, the low success rate, and the fact that this was a temporary cure for a problem, that it was not always successful. For does this sound like science or science fiction? Testing can be uncomfortable. Asking anyone who has had a mammogram, a pap smear, or a prostate examination lately. Testing can be frightening. People who are claustrophobic may become quite distressed in an MRI scanner. Sedation may be necessary. Some tests come in with potentially toxic exposures, such as dye or radiation. Testing can be risky. Even common or routine tests, such as a colonoscopy or cardiac catheterization, are occasionally associated serious complications. The sleeping pill in the 1950s called thalidomide, which caused 10,000 babies to be born with severe deformities, was tested on animals prior to its commercial release. But later tests on pregnant mice, rats, guinea pigs, cats, and hamsters did not result in birth defects unless the drug was administered at extremely high doses. Animal tests on the arthritic drug Vioxx showed that it had a protective effect on the hearts of mice, and yet when the drug went on to cause more than 27,000 heart attacks and sudden cardiac deaths before being pulled from the market. Examples of drugs which have failed before being considered successful in an animal test, as in 2006, 6 men took a drug which has been labeled as TGN 1412 in a clinical trial at Northwick Park in London, which caused life-threatening and disastrous side effects in less than 2 hours, including organ failure and brain swelling. The same drug had obviously been given to monkeys at a 500-fold higher dose. The monkeys showed no ill effects, and the drug was therefore considered safe to proceed to human trials. Since the Northwick Park disaster, an alternative human-based toxicity test had been developed when TGN 1412 was tested. The method was shown to predict and therefore avoid the side effects seen in the volunteers. In 2004, a new anti-inflammatory drug called rofecoxib, or under the brand name of Vioxx, was withdrawn from the market over safety concerns after a reported 88,000 to 140,000 people suffered heart attacks from taking the drug. Vioxx and similar drugs had previously been considered not only safe but protective in animal tests. 150 potential treatments for stroke considered successful following animal tests have gone on to fail in human clinical trials. Decades of HIV testing in animals have. And that's my opening statement.
Thank you. So now we'll be stating our 3 arguments. So for our first argument, the primary reason as to why clinical trials are beneficial to society is their ability to provide meaningful information in regards to the treatment and the effects it has on a human. With clinical trials, new and better treatment options can be discovered and used with patients. For our second argument, clinical trials have the power to improve the quality of life for patients who are suffering from illnesses that may not necessarily have a proper cure available. With the use of clinical trials, better treatment options with better results can be available to these patients. And lastly, clinical trials do not only benefit the medical field, but the economic sector will gain a boost as biotech companies play a large role in this process. Thank you. And you can state your 3 arguments at this point. Oh, we can't hear you.
Go.
Our theory point is if the information is wrong, it can't be good. And then number 2 is the fact that these companies are worried more about the money rather than the safety of the humans and the safety of the people who are actually doing the clinical trial. And third, if it can be a cure, then why is it hurting so many people?
Your 3 arguments? Oh, were those your 3 arguments?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, okay. Okay, thank you. So at this point, we'll start by going back and forth on some different points that we have for each side. So right now, we will look at the social perspective of clinical trials.
Hi, my name's Rafe. I'm the one talking with his hand up. I don't know if you guys can see me.
Yeah.
It's nice to have this debate with you guys today, and so I'm just gonna get started. So an expanding argument that we have for the social perspective of clinical trials are clinical trials bring attention towards illnesses at hand, and so when this happens, a community can really come together to perhaps create a new initiative and create more funding to help push the clinical trial along with other research towards this illness, which could potentially even create more cures or perhaps speed up the timeline to create this cure for many illnesses that we have today. Another point we have is going to be said by my friend Simon here. Yeah.
Okay, so thinking about the topic on a personal level, if a loved one of yours was sick, would you not want to exhaust every attempt possible at helping them and finding a cure for them? Is that not worth the risk, in your opinion?
And one last thing to say before we give the reins over to you guys to rebuttal is if we were to once again think about it on a personal level, then of course like we would rather gather some consent first. Like if you obviously before we test somebody, we need to make sure that it's socially acceptable, that the people involved are aware that what the process is and what is pertained in this clinical trial.
So at this point, if any of you would like to say anything back.
Go so.
Okay. First, you're bringing attention to a potential that could or could not happen. Many people who do have this disease, but the clinical trial doesn't. The clinical trial does not go to those who actually have it. They test it on healthy human beings who do not have it. So in a way, you're giving them the disease, but it's not the same thing as someone who does have the disease. And the other thing, second, companies want the money rather than the people. With the Vioxx, they 27,000 shelves. That was 27,000 less before they put it on the shelves. Third, how they have yes, they give them, but they have no fully consented to. Most of these clinical trial volunteers don't know what they are fully committing to. syphilis. Most people did not know what they were getting themselves into. They listened to the doctors, and the doctors would explain what they were talking about. And it's to make, and the purpose is to make money, not to cure. That's what the clinical trials are for. They're making more money than they're helping. They're not helping the people with the.
Well, if you're looking at it from that point, then obviously then you can make conclusions that the world is a horrible place and that everyone's just out there for money. Which is definitely the case in some reasons. Definitely the case in some situations. But of course, sometimes you'll have to buckle down and try to think about how companies are really trying to do a good thing. For example, even non-for-profit companies and organizations, then they can push these initiatives forward and perhaps create some cures and illnesses, and that would then fix the issue that companies will only be out there for money, because with not-for-profit, of course, they aren't making any money.
Place, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about the clinical trials and how they are hurting people more than helping people.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Your argument's taking out your own logic.
Taking at our own.
You said that your argument's breaking your own logic, and we're not talking about helping people, hurting people. Unfortunately, your particular voice is breaking up slightly when you're speaking. I'm not sure what's happening on the mic on the other end, but sometimes we can hear it and sometimes we can't. So it's just a technical issue that's happening right now.
Okay, I'll repeat real quick what you said. Can you hear me now, Clay?
The best voice that we heard was actually the first girl speaker.
Okay, right.
Her voice came in very clearly.
Go ahead, explain.
Chirp in a couple points here, because it's, I think it pretty true.
Go.
Well, what we're saying is that blood companies did not directly want to move for a cure. They don't want exactly to make people better, to cure them exactly free from diseases, but they rather just exactly place people's money rather than their improvement.
Oh, okay. So then I could bring the point where companies that are pushing this initiative, they are, some of them are non-for-profit, meaning they aren't only in there for the money, they are actually there to help people.
Okay. $99%. So 99% of the companies that makes medicine are for profit.
Oh, okay. Then I'm gonna move over to our economical people who are more familiar with the world of business concerning this topic. I was waiting for them to kick in here, but looks like leaving me out to dry.
Yeah, what is that?
Someone from the economic needs to counteract their economic points. Yeah.
Actually, anybody can talk. All your voices are sounding the same. It's breaking in and breaking out all the same. So anybody can talk. It won't really matter to us. It's sounding the same. Is there someone responding?
No.
Wait, aren't they?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, it was her first.
Okay. No, go ahead. Is this any better, Clay?
Maybe we have to talk longer to figure that out.
Okay.
It might be.
Go ahead.
You said you were going to begin your what?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
So that would be Ishka. Okay. Or Ishka.
we do live in a capitalist, northern hemisphere where we know that.
Correct.
That was an excellent point. And yes, it may be true that clinical trial companies are, at the end of the day, expecting a paycheck. But at the same time, in this day and age, everyone is looking towards that paycheck just to live a sustainable life. It just so happens that these clinical trial workers are also trying to do something good in their job. They could be working something else that may not have as much of a benefit towards the other people in the population. But the fact that they're doing this job to create new drugs that do help people does in fact show that they have an incentive to help people, and this is for the greater good, and it doesn't just purely have a monetary need behind it.
Okay, now let me go back into one of the points one of my friends said. They brought up the whole example of Viagra. It was meant for blood pressure, for regulating heart blood pressure, sorry. And at the end of the day, it didn't work as that. So what if Viagra had to do in order to make that money back that it spent on all this monetary value and stuff like that? They used it as a erectile dysfunction to get money to make the money back that they wasted. So at the end of the day, is it just to help people, or is it just for money?
Can you just give us 1 minute? Thank you.
No, it's not. It's not muted. No circle.
Should I mute it? Yeah. So, from a social perspective, I'm not sure if you can hear me clearly, but from a social perspective, even though the erectile dysfunction problem was accidentally cured as a result of creating this medication, it can increase the happiness of people, as an increased sex drive will have a happier population, and this also indirectly increases the reproducing capabilities of that said population.
And fun fact, Viagra, being a vasodilator, is still used as a off-the-brand medication to help in other conditions rather than erectile dysfunction.
They said that the Viagra cured it. It wasn't really a cure. It was more like a temporary fix, right? It's not really a cure because they're still prescribed to the medicine. So if they were cured, they wouldn't have to take the medicine. Isn't that right?
Pardon? Could
Yeah,
you
yeah.
repeat-
Could you repeat that?
Yes, it's not really a cure. It's more of a.
It's not a cure.
temporary- He's asking.
Yeah, it is a temporary treatment. That's right.
At the end of the day,
But at the end of the day, the clinical trial, they keep trying to find new things to improve treatments for people, and they also try to find cures. But until then, I think people will take any temporary treatments to at least take away their problems, even if it's temporary. And yes, to be honest, I do think that there are a lot of companies that go for bio companies that look just to earn their money at the end of the day. But at the same time, what they're also doing, they have the resources to be able to give people hope for alternatives to hospital treatments that are currently running, like standard treatments today. So I think it's wrong to just say that all they want is money and we should avoid them.
Especially considering that many of the doctors, or rather, let me change how I say that. Some doctors that work on clinical trials do so out of their own initiative. It can be volunteer work.
Sometimes, yeah.
Do.
Go.
So you say that if both of those medicines make the patient out of the hospital, and how are you going to make a drug that may take the patient out of the hospital, but killing some other people who are healthy and who are not need to pick up the drug?
Clinical trials, they're not always there to kill people, and mainly let's say a situation where there is a cancer patient with terminal cancer.
So you do admit that some clinical trials have killed people.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did, because you said that some clinical trials may not kill some clinical trials. Not all clinical trials.
Well, what? Yeah, go. No, I don't.
Though the implication was placed, that was not the intention of what my partner said.
But with clinical trials, here's the thing: the patients choose to take the clinical trial at their own risk, and it makes sense if you're a terminally ill patient, and you have no other alternative, and this clinical trial is providing a very good chance, not even if it's good, even if it's a slight chance, and you're not gonna live with standard treatments from the hospital. If there's a clinical trial going on and you see that it's reasonable and it'll give you a slight chance of living, good hope, then why shouldn't the patient go for it? Provide researchers with good science, good proof of a future potential cure to a major disease, and maybe even help cure the person who is terminally ill instead of just letting them pass away and have no potential benefit.
So you say that this is hypothetical, right? So it may not or it may can. Is that what you're saying?
What he's saying is that there's a slight increased possibility outside of regular treatment in order to cure the person, and the person that submits entirely voluntarily to the treatment is fully aware of all the positives.
Yeah, they're responsible, and it's beneficial to them, the clinical trial, because it might save their lives if they're terminally ill.
It may save their lives, not.
What about those people that?
But they were dying.
Trials outside, like India, some third world countries where people don't even know how to read English or any type of language. Trials are given them, and then they're being at their risk, but they don't know what they're reading. And they're going for the money, for benefit themselves, not other people.
I think it's our responsibility to make sure that before clinical trials happen, that the people that are getting the clinical trials done on them are fully aware of everything that's going to be done, how it's going to be done, the risks, and then they get to accept based on all of that.
And I'm not entirely sure the situation you said. If I heard correctly, someone in a third world country were to be placed in a clinical trial. I don't know if that is an entirely practical situation to be applied, because someone in a third world country won't exactly have access to a clinical trial environment, such as someone who lives here in Canada or America or even in Europe.
Essentially, the clinical trials we're talking about are intended to be very well regulated and safe practices. The trials that may involve some risk factor through maybe a loss of translation are not very well regulated and should not apply to the basis of many of the arguments.
But yeah, and drugs used are passed by the FDA before going on to being tested on people. So it's not like we're just putting weird chemicals randomly into someone's body. with no prior testing. We've tested things and they've been examined and checked by the FDA, and it's approved to be trialed on patients if they approve. So, yeah.
Okay, you know what?
What happened?
They
Oh
just-
no.
They just
They were
canceled.
winning, so they just.
Hello, region 13.
Did the camera die?
And that concludes our
The
argument.
FDA and the USA
All right.
really outsourced to other.
No, the
Region
FDA
13.
The FDA is only.
Sorry about that. Would you like, go ahead and say that.
Okay, the FDA is in the United States, so they go and outsource to other countries, and one of the countries that they outsource to is India, and it's one of the most
Going clinical trial.
Now, is the FDA an agency in Canada? Because I don't know what agency your government has.
Wait, sorry, I don't think any of us heard.
We didn't hear you.
Please repeat.
Is the FDA an agency established by your government in Canada, or is that just here in the United States?
Oh no,
Of what organization are you talking about?
the
Is it
FDA.
FDA?
Oh, the
Who's
FDA. Oh.
No, FDA is American, but
Then why
right.
would you
But
say
yeah, Canada has.
outsourcing if these drugs are approved by the FDA, they're coming to America?
Well, I mean, I was trying to put something that's for you to, like, something you can relate with. But in Canada, we have our own organizations that regulate these things, along with same with any other country,
Do they
most
have the same
countries.
regulations, or is it because it's not like a whole FDA is a worldwide thing where they care about like the same things that India cares about, or like any like administration?
Every country sets its own standards and regulations, and the FDA is like Canada has an FDA, but it's different. It's under Health Canada, yeah, and each country doesn't have a worldwide same standards, but they're not going out to kill people. They're setting standards for the benefit of people that clinical trial companies have to follow.
All right, then, Brian.
So based on the arguments that we've had so far, we'd kind of like to move on to
Oh yes. Go ahead.
ethical in that matter. To kind of move on to ethical. So
Okay, move on.
I'm actually dying. Their focus is just Jackie. Jackie. Jackie, go. Okay. I'm actually done.
Very nice.
Okay.
All right, so let's take a step back a bit. So we have been delving into a bit of the ethical perspective, as my friend Khaled over here has been going into that. We have been researching the ethical perspective of this. I'd like to say that there are a lot of reasons why the clinical trials are actually safe, and a lot of trials have been done in the past. Why don't we go back to World War II, around the 1940s era, the 1930s era? We had a lot of people die due to the trials performed by the German and the Japanese. Now, all this created a code after the war that's called the Nuremberg Code. This code outlines for ethical procedures to be followed to ensure safety of the patient, and it is considered to be the most authoritative legal reference on the subject of human experimentation. One of the points that was discussed earlier was patients and how they volunteer to how they have to volunteer their consent. The first point of the Nuremberg Code is that required is the voluntary, well-informed understanding consent of the human subject in a full legal capacity, which basically discusses how this human subject has to give their own consent. We continuously discussed this earlier, and this really hammers down the point, the single point. The Nuremberg Code is, while it's not fully legal anywhere, it is generally the most authoritative legal reference, and this should be the reference used by most countries around the world. Thank you.
Okay. Give your talk. So is there, Pascal? Is there anything that you guys like to counter to?
When you say about that, you're telling that people are getting informed about what the risks are, but however, some clinical trials aren't telling the full risk to those patients who are getting
because they're testing to find out the risks. They don't know the risks. Most of the risks are.
Yes, because yeah. How can you inform people about the risks and stuff when you're testing on them to find out the information and the risk and what is considered?
Well, another point of the Nuremberg Code is that the experiment should be based on previous knowledge that justifies the experiment. So any experiment that could cause this risk would be justified based on the previous knowledge known. For example, if this experiment were to possibly cause death, then this should be known prior to the experiment.
How can death be justified?
We are not justifying death. In any case, we are actually only talking about legally and ethically approved clinical trials, and we're not endorsing any kind of human harm or harm upon any type of people who are anywhere in the world. We are just trying to give the world and make it a better place for humanity and to develop protection against diseases and conditions that we don't already have using previous knowledge and ethical codes such as the Nuremberg laws.
It's not ethical to kill someone when you're trying to find the solution. You're killing people while trying to save people.
And you also said before that, and we also said before that the drugs may have not worked. In some cases, the drugs that were created, like Viagra, not end up to being what it's supposed to cure.
Okay, so as humans, we push for an immortal race. Like, we work night and day to battle the many diseases that we face, such as Alzheimer's, cancer, heart disease, stroke, and etc. And as the years pass on, we become weaker and weaker. And so we have to find methods in order to preserve our race. And we can't use animals. Using animal clinical trials isn't going to work on humans because we don't have the same genetic information and we don't have the same genetic code either. Oh, I think she's saying something. Are you? No. Okay. And because we don't have the same exact code, we can't really save ourselves in that way. Like, we can't find help for ourselves if we look at other means.
And also the term killing, I don't think you can use the term killing for what happens to people that pass away from clinical trials, because they're not being killed. They're actually being given an opportunity to live, to be cured, and they're willing to take the risks of going through a specific clinical trial. And it is sometimes unfortunate that some people pass away and that clinical trials don't go as planned, but that's why they're trials and that's why people accept them. And I don't think it's okay to say that we're killing them from the clinical trials.
And to add to that, it's interesting that a lot of your side is based on people dying from trying to save a life. But how would you argue surgeries? Some people die in surgeries, but it's to save their life. Was that not worth it? Should we abolish all surgeries? What about cancer treatment? Some people die from that too. Should we stop doing that then? Should we not even try to save them? Clinical trials are meant to try. People may die, but it's an effort, it's hope, it's something to give a dying patient something to believe in. How can you completely disregard that?
Also,
The people who are going into clinical trials are not always dying and are not always looking for another way to live. Some of them just do it for money and are completely selfish.
Have y'all talked about that at all?
Yeah, economics.
Okay, so to address what she was saying, how most of the people that are doing clinical trials are simply looking for the financial gain of the clinical trial, and we understand that. As you said, yes, you don't mean that it's killing. However, you're taking someone's health that needs the money, and you're using them like a lab rat for a greater cause. There's no justification for a greater cause. You cure in a hypothetical situation. However, the reality is that you're going to harm them in some form or fashion just to get that outcome. So are these? I guess my thing is the end really justified by what you're doing?
Did they mute us?
So for and also when we do clinical trials, we follow 7 main principles that is to assure the participants of any clinical trials to keep them safe and secure from any danger. So we value this. The 7 main principles we value is social and clinical value,
scientific validity, fair subject selection, favorable risk-benefit ratio, independent review, informed consent, and respect for potential and enrolled subjects.
And to address what you said about people who decide to do or participate in clinical trials for money, it's not. It's their decision. Each individual makes a decision to participate in the clinical trial, and we can't stop them. If people may sell their bodies for money by doing prostitution, and we cannot legalize that. We can't do anything about it because that's their decision. If people decide to put their lives at risk for money in a clinical trial, all we can do is tell them about the risks and tell them if they're sure, but we can't make that decision for them.
Excuse my, I guess, intrusion, but to say that you just admitted that prostitution and you said we can't legalize it when you obviously, like we do, it is illegal for a reason, because you understand that there are risks, because you understand that this is something that you shouldn't be doing, and that there are laws against doing this. This is why you cannot commit suicide illegally, because you cannot put your body at risk. So simply signing a form saying you consent, that you understand that they're giving you a pill, that they're giving you a shot, that they're giving you some sort of medicine that you believe is going to benefit humanity as a whole is not some sort of justification. And the fact that it's the same thing, you're right, it's just selling your body, and it's not simply saying you understand the risk. You're selling your body and that should be stopped. That's not right in any form or fashion.
Could you give us a minute? Okay. Could you give us 1 minute?
Huh?
Mr. Alice, can you zoom in?
Okay, you're on.
So, the monetary incentive that some people have to participate in clinical trials is sometimes integral for them in surviving in today's society. In this monetary value may be enough to save their own life. What I'm trying to say here is that this money may be something that they require very desperately. It may not be their choice to get into this trial, but they may not be an unethical situation, as it benefits not only the rest of society, but also these people temporarily that are trying to live their everyday lives. Now, the argument you have to this could revolve around that we cannot subject people to this in forced situations and force them to alter their body in these ways, but then you'd have to look at the value of one life compared to another, and that's not something that we wish to talk about in this debate. That seems to be more of a individual's beliefs issue.
And our debates don't really center around personal matters or personal beliefs. It's just like the topic at hand. And at this point, we're talking about clinical trials and does it benefit people or not? Not personally, do you believe it benefits them or not? So I guess we'd like to move on to economical at this point.
Okay, so economically, it does clinical trials do benefit us because of the millions of dollars that it saves due to drug avoidance costs. And in addition to that, it also saves resources at our hospitals because testing new drugs before employing them allows the hospital to save those resources that would have been used in treating the damage. And yeah.
And biotechnology companies also provide some compensation as well. Some have become reliant on the monetary compensation offered by many clinical trials. Clinical trials provide citizens with an alternative income when in need.
Would you like to say anything in return? We can't hear you.
All the time.
Oh, okay.
Cool. Jason, I know exactly what to say, but I'm not going to say it. Jason. Okay, so going back to the economical side of the issue, as you had addressed that in the end it does benefit. However, it only benefits the corporations as a whole, as we see. While it may not be exactly the same as with different countries, but I'm pretty sure we have a general understanding that most of these companies, these drug companies that are selling these, that are profiting off these clinical trials, are making millions, if not millions of funds upon these clinical trials, in which they're essentially paying the people that are making the drug happen. What I'm saying is the testers, little to nothing. So in the end, all this is all for profit. If you want to go back to the moral side of it, we're helping humanity. Yes, that's what cause. Yes, you can create a pill that can cure AIDS or HIV. I'm just going to say that for an example. However, you understand, it's a common understanding that it will not be sold at some low price. This is all for profit by the corporation.
We didn't quite hear some of your points. The last point I believe.
Sorry, essentially just saying that all the money made here and economically, an economical gain, it's all for the corporations. It's not towards the people. It's not towards the country. It's not towards your government. It's a private corporation making the money off of the people. Whether it be the clinical trials, whether it's selling the drug itself, this is a private interest, really.
Well, if you mentioned that it's all an economic gain and it's all the companies that are doing this that are gaining a profit, what about the people who are actually gaining benefits from the clinical trials and they're getting their treatments. So for example, there's clinical trials that are looking at immunotherapy, which is a treatment for cancer patients. And they've actually shown benefits for patients who have head and neck cancer. And if clinical trials weren't held, this treatment would have never been approved. And it wouldn't have helped improve the lives of all these patients and the world suffering from all these different cancers. So it's not primarily just the government, the companies that are gaining from this. There's people around the world that are gaining benefits from the clinical trials as well.
So you're saying that they're looking for cures, but in the sense that you're making that where they still have to take the drugs day in, day out to still give the company the money that instead of giving them a temporary fix, why not actually cure the cancer? Why not actually make a cure to where they don't have to have that drug? They wouldn't make it.
So I don't know about them trying to cure. I'm sure people are trying to find the cure for cancer, but people will take what they can, whether it's to keep taking drugs to be able to live. People will do whatever they can for their survival. And obviously people want the cure for cancer, and I don't know when that will come, but until then, I think we have to rely on clinical trials. And once the cure for cancer does come, how are we going to test it? Well, it's going to be clinical trials. You're always going to have to revert back to clinical trials, because how are you ever going to test it on a human? To first see whether any medication works to help people, you have to try it on someone. And that's what a clinical trial is. So if you're not liking the idea of having clinical trials, then that means you don't like the advancement of the medical industry, and we can't ever have more cures to the big diseases out there like ALS, cancer, Alzheimer's, etc.
Would you like to say anything in return? We'd like to do our concluding statements in about 5 minutes.
Over there. It's over there. You have to just let them. I'm gonna say yes.
So do you think that the companies are out there to make money for drugs for people who are sick?
Everyone wants money. It's true. Everyone.
So you're saying that the companies who make drugs are not there since they love money.
Yeah, there's definitely, like, everyone wants to make their money, but there are also people that want to find real cures along with money. And they'll obviously make that money once they find that cure, because they'll probably put a big price tag on it. So I don't really think that has a huge role. I'm sure money does have a role in finding the cure, but in terms of clinical trials, I think, again, it's not just about money. It's because you already have a treatment out there that you want to try on someone. We're not talking about making the treatment, but testing it out, and that's what a clinical trial is again. So I don't really think that has a big money aspect to it.
And just as a small hypothetical situation, if one of you guys were a doctor, let's say researching cancer, I'm 99% sure that none of you would do it for free out of the goodness of your heart in order to help other people with cancer. I mean, all of those are your wishes and some of your driving factors for finding the cure, but it is not no one's going to do it for free at the end of the day, and we still have these problems at hand that we need to fix.
At the end of the day, you'd be trying to support yourself and perhaps someone else that you're in charge of taking care of. It's not wrong to desire an income when working towards whether it be the greater good.
And honestly, even with that, clinical trials, sure, there is an economical benefit to that. So you are gaining money, but in that fact, it also helps people in a way that we're trying our best to find a cure or trying our treatments on people. And with that, we'd like to start wrapping up this debate because we are running a little short on time. So in conclusion, clinical trials are beneficial to society as new treatments can be utilized and used throughout this method so they can improve the lives of suffering patients. Although there are risks involved with with clinical trials, as we've discussed in this debate, the information that we receive from these tests help better our understanding and help us progress in the medical field. The use of clinical trials will continue to better our future and the lives of those that continue to suffer from these illnesses. And like said, to gain something, we have to lose something as well. Okay, would you like to each have any wrap-up or conclusions?
Muted while we're thinking, so just the ambient noise.
In conclusion, clinical trials are in fact hurting more than helping people, because in the sense that you cannot give people the knowledge of risks when you don't even know the risks that yourself. You are doing this to find the risks of humans, in the sense that you actually kill people because the risk, that is the risk. The risk is that you can die from these clinical trials, and you're trying to put a price tag on somebody's life, which is unethical and unmoral in this sense. So you're basically hurting more than you are helping.
Is it still on?
Yes.
Thank you for giving your concluding statement, and thank you for participating with us in this debate. It was a really interesting conversation, and that basically brings our debate to an end. Thank you.
Okay.